I had got some beads. I had strung my own beads. But I didn't have Tulsi beads. They had some other beads. Gargamuni, who ran the store, ran out of Tulsi beads. There were so many people getting initiated. There was these other beads, and they were kind of dark red wood. They were blackish dark red wood. And I had very proudly strung them on this orange cord, and they were very nice beads, I thought. On my initiation night, I came, the moment of truth came when you would come up and you'd give Prabhupada your beads. And in those days, it was a very personal thing. He would he would be sitting there before the fire, and you'd give him the beads, and he would sit there and he would chant a whole round right there in front of you. So I came up and I gave Prabhupada my beads, and he looked at the beads and he says, "Oh, Rudraksha. We don't chant on Rudraksha. Rudraksha is like the Shiva beads, beads that Shivites have." And I said, "No, Prabhupada, they're not Rudraksha." This sudden feeling of being rejected. Oh no, I'm right at the brink of becoming his disciple, and now my beads are being rejected. So I said, "No, Prabhupada, they're not Rudraksha." And he looked at him again closer, and he could see, they weren't Rudraksha, they weren't Tulsi beads. And he said, "How come you don't have Tulsi beads?" And I said, Gargamuni ran out of Tulsi beads. And he said, "Well, this is all right." So he kind of took them, and he chanted on them. And
the very first instruction he gave it to me was not after initiation, but when we arrived from Bombay on a train, and then we reached Radha Damodar temple by Tonga. It was early morning, and we entered into Prabhupada's quarters, small, tiny room, about maybe 15 of us, and I was sitting just in front of Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was speaking, and we were all listening. And I had one habit of, when I arrived to hear someone with attention, I had a tendency to do like that. Some people do that. I was sitting in front of Prabhupada doing that, and Prabhupada said, "Stop it!" So that was in fact my first meeting, personal meeting, and first instruction that yes.
Well, we were always anxious to get some mercy from Srila Prabhupada in the form of his belongings, something that we could hold on to. And I also would do this very often as his servant. I would try to get something from Srila Prabhupada. And the very first opportunity I had that I remember was when I had gotten Brahmin initiation, which again was in Los Angeles in 1972. I had my Brahmin thread, I think all of maybe 1 month, and this was the thread, of course, that Prabhupada had chanted on. And in New Vrindavan, when we used to go bathe, you would have to go outside, and there was a little stream that was dammed up, and you would grab water and throw it over your body. It was quite nice, quite cold. But depending on the position of the moon, whether it was new moon or full moon, it could be very dark at 4 o'clock in the morning. So one morning I remember going and bathing, going to the brook there and throwing buckets of semi-mud and water over my head to bathe in the morning in New Vrindavan. And when I got back to my quarters, my Brahmin thread was gone. I went to Chenkahatri and my thread was gone. Because I was very young and very much attached to it, and I was totally devastated that now, that link had shattered. That link was gone. I thought, this is definitely a very bad omen. Something's not good here. Of course, then we didn't have Brahmin threads from India, neither. You got some string and you tied it in a knot, You would get six of them, and that was your Brahmin thread. So that's what I had to do, to continue chanting my Gayatri, and I did it. But I was never content. I always felt that I needed that. And of course, even there now I had become a servant. For some reason, there was no question of asking him, would you chant on a thread for me? But I devised a plan. After being with him for a month, he told me that whenever Ekadasi was there, that he would change his Brahmin thread on Ekadasi. And he said, so at this time, he said, you can put the thread on the table. And So I was all prepared. I said, well, now I will get Prabhupada's old Brahmin thread, because he's going to take it off and place it on the table. And Prabhupada was bathing, so I set up his table, put the tilak out, the mirror out, and I put a nice Brahmin thread and laid it right on the table, which today was Ekadasi. And I watched. This was in Radha Damodar temple, where Prabhupada was staying in the room downstairs. And I was on the veranda right outside, and I was just sitting there watching and waiting. I was so happy. Now I was going to get my Brahmin thread back. And Prabhupada put on his tilak and put the second thread around and began chanting Gayatri. So now I was busy in the kitchen with Jamuna, helping getting his lunch together. And Prabhupada chanted Gayatri. And then he left his quarters and he walked by the veranda into the kitchen to take prasadam. And I raced into the room and I found this Brahmin thread, and he had broken every thread, all 6 of them. He broke them all. And I thought, why did he do this? And I immediately started thinking he must know something. He must have done this because I wanted his thread. Of course, I was very stubborn, so I grabbed each thread and I tied it in a little knot, all 6 of them. I thought, now I have my Brahmin thread. He said, despite everything, I still have it. Prabhupada's chanted on it, I thought, so many times, so it's better than my original Brahmin thread. So I took the Brahmin thread and put it in my pocket, and then I went in where Prabhupada was taking prasadam. And he said, so that Brahmin thread that I've left on the table? I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada. He said, so you should take that Brahmin thread and dig under Tulsi Devi and bury it under a Tulsi plant. I thought, no, this is impossible. Like, is this what they do, or is he just doing this to me? And I said, okay, Srila Prabhupada. Of course, I didn't obey that order because I was so determined. It was one order that Srila Prabhupada gave that I just reneged on because I thought I have to have this Brahmin thread. So I took it and disobeyed his instruction. But that was the beginning of many different opportunities I had to get a piece of Maha Prasadam in the form of cloth from Srila Prabhupada.
I remember one time he cooked for his spiritual master's appearance or disappearance day on the La Cienega temple here. And he cooked a pot of khichdi, which he said was his spiritual master's favorite dish. I mean, it is a wonderful dish. And he cooked it using urdal, which is not just the split urdal, but the polished urdal. So it came out with a very creamy consistency. And he made a pot about this size, about half full, and there were 30 of us in that room. And there are many other dishes too. So we started out by tasting the prasadam that Prabhupada had cooked, and everyone was in a jolly mood because it was a holiday, and we were observing the appearance or disappearance. I think it was the appearance day of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And that picture of Prabhupada cooking at the stove is that occasion when he was cooking that khichdi. It's a famous picture. And we came out, and everybody got a dab of khichdi on their plate. And by that time, it was cold. And I think Prabhupada wasn't there. He had already gone to his quarters to do things. And everybody was in a jolly mood. We were all talking and chatting, and we all reached over with our fingers, because in those days we ate with our fingers, and we picked up the khichdi, and we popped it in our mouths, and all of a sudden this conversation died out everywhere. This was not some external ceremony that we were honoring this prasadam. We were not in the mood to honor anything. We were having a good time and chatting and jolly. As soon as that prasadam touched our tongues, we fell silent. We sat there in dead, icy, ice cave silence, tasting grain after grain of it until it was all gone, and then we searched for stray grains on our plate. And then everybody in the room, by common mutual consent, began crawling on their all fours towards the pot in the middle of the room where there was still a little bit left. And we all reached in simultaneously, and we were taking little pieces out of the pot. Our eyes were staring straight ahead. No one spoke a word until there was nothing left. Then we all went back and sat down and sat there in silence for almost an hour. Something about that prasadam was so charged with what must have been something like Gopi Bhava. It was too much ecstasy involved in that prasadam that we were struck by it. every feeling, the exquisite, excruciating feeling that Prabhupada feels for his spiritual master was present, and we had a chance. And then we realized that Prabhupada had given that to us like an extra special little present or benediction, that he'd allowed us to open the door a little bit and peek at what his world was like.